He took a DNA test for fun and uncovered a 40-year-old family secret. Nathan Mercer had never believed that a cardboard box could divide a life into before and after. The box was small enough to fit in one hand. White, glossy, harmless-looking. It arrived on a bright Saturday morning in October, wedged between a grocery coupon booklet and a credit card offer. Nathan brought it inside with the rest of the mail and set it on the kitchen counter without giving it much thought. His wife, Elise, spotted the logo and laughed. "You actually ordered it?" she asked. "You said you wanted proof," Nathan replied. "Proof that your grandfather was not an Italian prince. He may have been a duke." From the breakfast table, their 14-year-old daughter Sophie groaned. She had heard the family story too many times. According to Nathan's father, the Mercers had Mediterranean blood, although no one could explain how a family that had lived in northern Ohio for 4 generations had acquired it. Robert Mercer insisted his own grandfather had once crossed the Atlantic under a false name after falling in love with a woman beneath his station. Claire Mercer insisted Robert had invented the story after drinking too much wine at a wedding in 1997. The debate had become a family joke. For Nathan's 40th birthday, Elise bought him a home DNA kit so they could finally settle it. Nathan was a high school history teacher, a man who liked documents, dates, and evidence. He told his students that memory was unreliable, that every family story grew softer around the edges as the years passed. Yet when it came to his own family, he had never felt the need to investigate. The Mercers were ordinary in the way Nathan found comforting. His father had spent 35 years repairing elevators. His mother had worked in the public library until arthritis forced her to retire. They lived 12 minutes away in the same brick house where Nathan had grown up. There had been no scandal, no dramatic estrangement, no mysterious relatives appearing at weddings. Nathan's childhood had been steady. Pancakes on Sundays, baseball in the yard, his mother waiting at the window when he came home from school, his father teaching him how to change a tire in freezing rain because, as Robert liked to say, cars don't care if you're comfortable. Nathan had never questioned where he belonged. He opened the kit, followed the instructions, sealed the sample, and dropped it in the mail that afternoon. Then he forgot about it. 6 weeks later, on a cold Tuesday night, Nathan sat alone at the kitchen table grading essays about the causes of the First World War. Elise had gone to bed. Sophie was asleep upstairs. Rain tapped against the windows, and the house had settled into the kind of silence that made every appliance sound louder than usual. At 11:47 p.m., Nathan's phone buzzed. "Your DNA results are ready." He nearly ignored it. He had 3 more essays to grade, and one student had just argued that the war began because Europe was having a bad week. But curiosity won. Nathan opened the app. The first screen showed a map shaded in greens and blues. No Italian ancestry, not even a fraction. Mostly Irish, English, and Scandinavian. Nathan took a screenshot to send his father in the morning. Then he tapped the Relatives tab. At the top of the list was a name he had never seen. Daniel Cole. Shared DNA, 48.7%. Estimated relationship, full sibling. Nathan stared at the screen. He blinked once, then again. The numbers did not change. He refreshed the page. Daniel Cole remained at the top. Nathan's first thought was that the company had made a mistake. His second was that Robert had fathered another child. That possibility landed differently, heavier than he expected. He pictured his father, quiet and predictable, living some hidden life before Nathan was born. Maybe there had been a girlfriend, maybe a child given up for adoption. Maybe Robert did not even know. Nathan clicked Daniel's profile. The photograph loaded slowly. A man stood beside a fishing boat, squinting into the sun. He looked about Nathan's age, dark hair threaded with gray at the temples, broad shoulders, a crooked smile. Nathan felt the room tilt. The man did not merely resemble him. He looked like a version of Nathan shaped by a different life. The same deep-set eyes, the same narrow bridge of the nose, the same small indentation in the chin that Claire called a Mercer mark. Nathan zoomed in until the image blurred. His heart began to pound. He checked the profile details. Daniel Cole, age 40. Born in Bellwether, Ohio. That was Nathan's birthplace. Nathan looked toward the dark hallway as if someone might be standing there. The rain struck the windows harder. A branch scraped across the siding. A message icon showed a red notification. Daniel Cole had contacted him 2 hours earlier. Nathan opened it. "Hello, Nathan. I know this is strange. I've been waiting to see whether you would appear in the database. My mother gave birth to twin boys at St. Agnes Hospital on October 14, 1986. I was told my brother died before she could hold him. Your profile says you were born in Bellwether and your age matches. I don't want to frighten you, but I think you may be my brother." Nathan read the message 3 times. October 14, 1986. His birthday. St. Agnes Hospital. The hospital listed on his birth certificate. He stood so quickly that the chair scraped backward and hit the wall. The sound echoed through the kitchen. He walked to the sink, turned on the faucet, then forgot why he had done it. Cold water ran over an empty basin. He shut it off. His hands were shaking. Nathan climbed the stairs and stopped outside the bedroom. Elise slept facing the window, one hand tucked beneath her cheek. For several seconds he watched her breathe, trying to decide whether saying the words aloud would make them real. "Elise," he whispered. She did not move. "Elise." She opened her eyes and lifted her head. What happened? Nathan held out the phone. "I think I have a brother." Elise pushed herself upright. "What?" "A full brother." She stared at the screen. Her sleepiness vanished as she read the message. Nathan watched her expression change from confusion to concern. "Could your dad have?" "Full sibling," Nathan interrupted, "not half full." Elise looked at him. Neither of them said what that meant. If the test was correct, Daniel Cole shared both of Nathan's biological parents. And Robert and Claire Mercer could not both be Nathan's parents. By morning, Nathan had slept less than an hour. He did not call his parents. He told himself he needed more information first. DNA sites made mistakes. Accounts were mislabeled. Samples were contaminated. He searched for every possible explanation and found that while errors could happen, a match of nearly 50% was not the kind of result produced by a stray hair or a swapped envelope. Elise made coffee and watched him pace. "What are you going to say to him?" she asked. "I don't know." "You should answer." "What if he's wrong?" "What if he's right?" Nathan stopped pacing. On the table, his phone seemed to wait. At 8:12 a.m., he typed a reply. "I received your message. I was born on the same date at St. Agnes. I need time to understand this." Daniel answered less than a minute later. "Take all the time you need. I've had 40 years to wonder. I don't want to take anything from you. I only want the truth." That sentence followed Nathan through the day. "I only want the truth." He taught 3 classes, attended a faculty meeting, and nodded through a conversation about budget cuts without hearing most of it. Every time he looked at one of his students, he thought about names, records, bloodlines. He thought about how a person could live 4 decades inside a story and discover that the first page had been torn out. That evening, Nathan went into the basement and found the plastic storage bin marked family papers. Claire had given it to him after he bought the house, saying he was old enough to keep track of his own life. Inside were report cards, vaccination records, birthday cards, a lock of hair in a tiny envelope, and his birth certificate. Nathan unfolded it on the basement floor. Name, Nathan Michael Mercer. Date of birth, October 14, 1986. Place of birth, St. Agnes Hospital, Bellwether, Ohio. Mother, Claire Evelyn Mercer. Father, Robert James Mercer. The certificate had been filed 9 days after his birth. Nathan did not know whether that was unusual. He searched online. Most certificates were filed within several days, sometimes longer. Nothing proved anything. Beneath the certificate, he found a faded photograph of Claire holding him in a hospital bed. She looked pale and exhausted, but she was smiling. Robert stood beside her with one hand on the bundle in her arms. Nathan studied the infant's face. His own face. On Claire's wrist was a white hospital bracelet. The writing was too blurred to read. On the baby's ankle was another band. Nathan turned the photograph over. In Claire's handwriting were the words, "Our miracle, October 16, 1986. 2 days after he was born." Nathan sat on the cold concrete floor until Elise came downstairs and found him there. He handed her the photograph. "She looks like my mother," he said. "She is your mother," Elise replied gently. "You know what I mean." Elise lowered herself beside him. "Whatever the test says, whatever happened, she raised you." "That doesn't tell me what happened." "No, it doesn't." Nathan looked again at Claire's smile. He wanted to climb inside the photograph and ask the younger woman what she knew. Instead, he messaged Daniel. "Can we meet?" They chose a diner halfway between Bellwether and the town where Daniel lived. Nathan arrived 20 minutes early and sat in a booth near the back. He ordered coffee and did not touch it. Every time the door opened, he looked up. At 10:03 a.m., Daniel entered. Nathan knew him immediately. The resemblance was more unsettling in person. Daniel was slightly taller and thinner, with a small scar near his right eyebrow, but his movements felt familiar. The way he glanced around the room before choosing a path, the way he rubbed his thumb across his knuckles when nervous. Nathan had done the same thing since childhood. Daniel saw him and stopped. For a moment, neither man moved. Then Daniel walked to the booths. "And Nathan." "Daniel." They shook hands. The gesture was too formal, almost absurd, but neither knew what else to do. Daniel sat across from him. He looked directly at Nathan's face, then away. "Sorry," he said, "I'm trying not to stare." "So am I." Daniel smiled, and Nathan saw his own smile return from the other side of the table. A waitress poured coffee. Neither man spoke until she left. Daniel reached into a worn leather folder. "My mother's name is Marlene Cole," he said. "She was 26 when we were born. My father left before I was 2. She never remarried." Nathan asked, though he knew. Daniel nodded. "She always said she had twins, me and Samuel." The name struck Nathan harder than expected. "Samuel." Daniel slid a photocopy across the table. It was a hospital document, yellowed with age. At the top, in typed letters, were the words, Cole, Marlene. Under delivery information were 2 entries. Baby boy A delivered 3:41 a.m. birth weight, 6 pounds 11 ounces. Baby boy B delivered 3:49 a.m. birth weight, 6 pounds 4 ounces. Under baby boy B, someone had stamped deceased. Time of death 5:10 a.m. Nathan's mouth went dry. "There's more," Daniel said. He placed an old photograph beside the document. Marlene lay in a hospital bed, much younger, her hair damp against her forehead. A nurse held 2 bundled infants close enough that both could be seen. "One of the nurses took this before they said Samuel died," Daniel said. "Mom kept it hidden in a Bible. I found it after I did the DNA test." Nathan picked up the photograph. One baby's face was turned away. The other had a wrinkled forehead and a tiny open mouth. "You can't tell anything from this," Nathan said. "No. This could still be some kind of database error. I took a second test through another company." Nathan looked up. Daniel took a sealed box from the folder. "I bought one for you, different lab. I'll take another too. We can mail them together." Nathan stared at the box. Daniel's voice softened. "I'm not asking you to believe me because we look alike. I'm asking you to check. Does your mother know about the match?" Daniel hesitated. "No." "Why not?" "Because she buried a child 40 years ago. I won't tell her he may be alive until I'm sure." The waitress returned and asked if they wanted breakfast. Both declined. Daniel folded his hands. "What do your parents say?" "I haven't asked them." Something passed across Daniel's face. Not judgment, maybe disappointment. Nathan felt defensive. "I've known about this for 3 days." "I know. They're good people." "I didn't say they weren't." "You're thinking it." Daniel leaned back. "I'm thinking somebody lied." The diner seemed suddenly too bright. Nathan looked at the photograph of Marlene and the twins. My mother had miscarriages before me. 3, I think, she called me her miracle. Daniel said nothing. Nathan pushed the photograph back across the table. I'll take the second test. They mailed the kits that afternoon. Before they parted, Daniel stood beside his truck and said, "For what it's worth, I had a good childhood too. Not easy, but good. My mother worked 2 jobs, she never made me feel like I wasn't enough. But every year on our birthday, she baked 2 small cakes. One for me, one for Samuel. She would light both candles and then she would blow his out." Nathan pictured Claire baking his chocolate birthday cake, writing his name in blue icing. He imagined another candle going dark in another house. He drove home with the radio off. The second test confirmed the first. Nathan and Daniel were full biological brothers. The report arrived on a Thursday afternoon while Nathan was at school. He opened it in the empty teacher's lounge and sat frozen beneath the hum of fluorescent lights. There was no mistake now, no contamination, no technical explanation. He called Elise. "It's confirmed," he said. She was silent for a moment. "Are you coming home?" "No." "What are you going to do?" Nathan looked at the clock. His parents would be home. Robert usually watched the evening news at 5. Claire would be preparing dinner by then, moving carefully around the kitchen because of her knees. "I'm going to ask them." Nathan drove to the brick house where he had grown up. The porch light was on, though the sun had not set. A ceramic pumpkin sat beside the door. Claire changed the decorations with the seasons, and Nathan had teased her about it for years. He stood on the porch for nearly a minute before knocking. Robert opened the door. "Nate," he said, smiling, "you're early for Sunday." Nathan held up his phone. "I need to talk to you and Mom." The smile faded from Robert's face. That was the first answer. It was not surprise Nathan saw. It was fear. Robert stepped aside without asking what was wrong. Claire sat in the living room with a blanket over her legs, reading a mystery novel. She brightened when Nathan entered. "There's my favorite son." "I'm your only son," Nathan said automatically. The words landed in the room like broken glass. Claire's smile disappeared. Nathan sat in the chair across from her. Robert remained standing near the doorway. Nathan opened Daniel's photograph on his phone and placed it on the coffee table. "Who is he?" Claire looked down. Her face changed so quickly Nathan almost missed it. Her lips parted, her eyes widened, one hand rose toward her chest. Robert crossed the room. "Claire." She did not look at him. "Mom," Nathan said, "who is he?" Claire stared at the photograph. "I don't know," she whispered. Nathan's anger came fast, hot enough to burn through his fear. "Don't lie to me." "Nathan," Robert warned. "No, I took 2 DNA tests. He is my full brother. We were born at the same hospital 8 minutes apart. His mother was told her second baby died." Claire made a sound that was not quite a sob. Robert sat beside her and took her hand. Nathan looked from one face to the other. "You knew," he said. Claire shook her head, but Robert closed his eyes. "You knew," Nathan repeated. Robert opened his eyes. "Not everything." "How much?" Claire began to cry silently. Nathan had seen his mother cry at funerals and during sad movies. He had never seen fear strip her face so completely. Robert spoke slowly. "Your mother lost a baby that night." Nathan felt the room narrow around him. "What?" "She was 8 months pregnant. There were complications. St. Agnes was operating on emergency power because of the storm. The baby was delivered without a heartbeat." Nathan looked at Claire. She pressed both hands over her mouth. Robert continued. "A doctor came to me, Howard Bell. He said another patient had given birth to twins and could not care for both. He said she had agreed to a private adoption. He told me the paperwork would be handled quietly because the mother was unmarried and the family wanted privacy." Nathan's voice sounded far away. "You took one of her babies." "We adopted you." "Did she agree?" Robert did not answer. Did she agree? Nathan shouted. Claire flinched. Robert's face folded under the weight of the question. At the time, I believed she had. At the time. I found out later that something was wrong. Nathan stood. How much later? Robert looked at the floor. How much later? 9 years. The number was almost worse than 40. 9 years meant Robert had watched Nathan learn to ride a bicycle, lose his first tooth, and stand in a school play while knowing another woman believed him dead. What happened when I was 9? Nathan asked. The letter came. From Marlene. No, from a nurse. She said the mother had never consented. She said records had been changed. Nathan waited. What did you do? Robert's eyes filled with tears. I burned it. Claire turned toward him. What? Robert did not look at her. You told me it was a mistake, Claire said. You said it was someone trying to frighten us. I wanted to protect you. Protect me from what? From losing him. Claire stared at her husband as though she had never seen him before. Nathan stepped backward. The room contained every object he remembered from childhood. The brass lamp, the framed school photograph, the old clock that chimed too loudly, but nothing felt familiar now. You knew a woman was looking for me, he said. Robert stood. Nate, listen to me. You were our son. You were 9 years old. You had a life, a home. Your mother had survived things you don't understand. So you decided the truth belonged to you. I decided not to destroy 3 lives. You destroyed hers. Robert's face went pale. Claire reached for Nathan. Please, I swear to you I was told your birth mother wanted you placed. I had lost our baby. I was sedated. My mother handled everything, I thought. Your mother. Claire stopped. Nathan knew his grandmother Evelyn had been at the hospital. She had been a powerful woman in Bellwether, the wife of a county judge, chairwoman of charities, someone doctors returned calls for. She had died when Nathan was 23. What did Grandma do? He asked. Claire began shaking her head. I don't know. Robert looked away. Nathan saw it. You think she arranged this? I think she spoke to Dr. Bell, Robert said. And you never told me. You were ours. Nathan picked up his phone. Claire tried to rise, but pain stopped her. Nathan, don't leave like this. He looked at the woman who had held him through fevers, packed his lunches, cheered at every game. Love was still there. That was the cruelty of it. Love had not disappeared. It had become tangled with something unbearable. I don't know how else to leave, he said. Outside, the porch light glowed against the dark. Nathan sat in his car and gripped the steering wheel. His phone rang before he started the engine. Daniel. Nathan answered but could not speak. Are you okay? Daniel asked. Nathan stared at the house. They knew, he said. The silence on the other end was deep and immediate. How much? My mother says she thought it was an adoption. My father found out when I was 9 that your mother never agreed. Daniel breathed out slowly. Nathan pressed the heel of his hand against his forehead. He burned the letter. Daniel said nothing for so long Nathan thought the call had ended. Then he asked, will you come with me to tell my mother? Nathan looked through the living room window. Claire sat motionless on the sofa. Robert stood several feet away, neither of them touching. Nathan closed his eyes. Yes, he said, I'll come. Marlene Cole lived in a small blue house at the edge of Ashford, 40 miles from Bellwether. The yard was neat despite the season. Dead leaves had been raked into careful piles, and clay pots of yellow mums lined the porch steps. Nathan sat in Daniel's truck across the street. Neither man had spoken for several minutes. Daniel kept both hands on the steering wheel. She thinks you're a genealogist. Nathan turned toward him. You told her that? I told her someone contacted me about old hospital records. I didn't know how else to get you here without saying it over the phone. What if she doesn't want to see me? She has wanted to see you every day for 40 years. You don't know that she'll see me when she looks at me. Daniel's jaw tightened. She will. Nathan watched the front window. A lamp glowed behind lace curtains. He had spent the previous night trying to imagine Marlene. In his mind, she shifted constantly. Sometimes she was a grieving young mother reaching for an empty bassinet. Sometimes she was an older woman who would look at him and demand a love he did not know how to give. Sometimes she was simply a stranger whose blood happened to run through his veins. He thought about Claire calling him her miracle. He thought about Robert feeding a letter into a flame. "I'm not ready," Nathan said. Daniel opened the truck door. "Neither is she." They crossed the street. Daniel knocked twice and entered without waiting. "Mom." "In the kitchen." Her voice carried through the house. Nathan followed Daniel past framed photographs arranged along a narrow hallway. Daniel as a boy holding a fish. Daniel in a graduation gown. Daniel beside a woman and two young sons. Marlene was present in nearly every photograph, aging from a thin, dark-haired young woman into someone with silver hair and a softer face. There were no photographs of Samuel. Only the absence where they might have been. Marlene stood at the kitchen counter pouring tea. She wore a green cardigan and reading glasses on a chain. When she turned, she smiled at Daniel first. Then she saw Nathan. The teapot slipped from her hand. It struck the counter, spilling hot water across the tiles. Daniel reached for it, but Marlene did not move. She stared at Nathan with an expression so raw that he felt he had entered a private room without permission. "No," she whispered. Daniel stepped toward her. "Mom." Marlene backed away until she touched the cabinets. "No." Nathan could not breathe. Her eyes moved over his face, searching, rejecting, recognizing. One trembling hand rose to her mouth. "Samuel." The name was barely audible. Nathan felt it pass through him like a voice from underground. "My name is Nathan," he said. Marlene closed her eyes. Daniel caught her as her knees gave way. They helped her to a chair. Daniel cleaned the water while Nathan stood uselessly near the doorway. Marlene kept looking at him, then looking away. Tears ran down her face without sound. Daniel crouched beside her. "The tests confirmed it. He's my full brother, same birthday, same hospital." Marlene shook her head. "They said he died." "I know." I heard him cry. Nathan's throat tightened. Marlene pressed a fist against her chest. "They said I imagined it because of the medicine. They said the second baby was too weak, but I heard him. He cried after Daniel, a different cry, higher." She looked at Nathan again. "You cried." Nathan had no answer. Marlene stood abruptly and left the kitchen. Daniel started after her, but she returned carrying a small wooden box. She placed it on the table and opened it. Inside were two hospital bracelets. One read Baby Boy A. Cole. The other read Baby Boy B. Cole. Nathan touched the edge of the second bracelet, but did not pick it up. "They gave me that after the funeral," Marlene said. "They said it had been removed from his body. I asked to see him. Dr. Bell told me it would be better to remember the baby I had seen before." "Did you sign adoption papers?" Nathan asked. Marlene's face changed. "What?" "My parents were told you agreed to give up one twin." Her palm struck the table. "I never agreed to give up either of my children." The force of her anger startled all three of them. "I was not helpless," she continued. "I was not some girl they could rescue a baby from. I had a job, I had a home. My husband was a coward, but I had my sister and my mother. I would have raised 10 children before I surrendered one." Nathan nodded, though shame crawled across his skin for having asked. Marlene turned toward the window. "They buried him 4 days later, closed casket. The hospital said the baby had deteriorated and they advised against viewing. My mother believed doctors were next to God. She told me not to make trouble." "Where?" Nathan asked. "Greenwood Cemetery." Daniel looked at him. "I visit every year." Marlene reached into the box and removed a folded piece of paper. It was a funeral card. "Samuel David Cole. October 14, 1986. Loved for a moment, remembered forever." Nathan read the words twice. Marlene's voice softened. What did they call you? Nathan Michael. Were you happy? The question broke through every defense he had prepared. Yes, he said, I was. Marlene nodded as if the answer hurt and comforted her at the same time. Did she love you? My mother. Marlene flinched slightly, but she nodded. Yes, Nathan said, she loved me. Marlene looked down at the bracelet. Then I am glad for that much. Nathan had expected accusation. He had expected her to claim him. Instead, she offered gratitude to the woman whose family had taken him. He moved to the empty chair across from her. I don't know what I'm supposed to call you, he admitted. You don't have to call me anything. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel. Neither do I. For a while they sat without speaking. Then Marlene began to ask small questions. Did he like school as a boy? Had he been healthy? Did he have children? What kind of work did he do? Did he still hate peas? Nathan looked up. How would you know that? Marlene gave a weak, astonished laugh. Daniel used to hide them in his socks. Daniel, standing at the sink, said, once. For 3 years, Marlene replied. The laugh that escaped Nathan felt wrong and necessary. Marlene laughed too, then covered her face and cried. Nathan reached across the table. His hand stopped halfway. Marlene saw it. She placed her hand in his. Her fingers were cold. Nathan had held Claire's hand hundreds of times. This hand felt different, not because of blood, but because it contained 40 years of waiting. Marlene did not pull him into an embrace. She did not call him Samuel again. She simply held his hand and said, I am sorry they made your beginning a lie. On the drive home, Nathan received 17 missed calls from Claire and 4 from Robert. He did not return them. For the next 2 weeks, the secret expanded into every part of his life. Nathan went to work, taught lessons, answered emails, and attended Sophie's volleyball game. On the surface, he remained himself. Beneath it, he was splitting into versions. There was Nathan Mercer, son of Claire and Robert. There was Samuel Cole, the infant declared dead at 5:10 a.m. There was the unknown child between those names, carried through a storm-darkened hospital by someone who had decided where he belonged. Elise became the bridge between Nathan's lives. She listened when he was angry and when he contradicted himself. She reminded him to eat. She stopped him from reading hospital conspiracy forums at 3 in the morning. When Sophie noticed the tension and asked whether her grandparents were sick, Nathan told her there was a family problem and promised to explain when he understood it better. You don't understand it yet? Sophie asked. No. Do Grandma and Grandpa. Nathan thought of Robert's burned letter. They understand parts of it. Claire left voice messages every day. Some were tearful, some were practical. She asked whether Sophie needed a ride to practice. She said she had made Nathan's favorite soup. She apologized without saying exactly what she was apologizing for. On the 8th day, she left a different message. Nathan, I found something in your grandmother's things. I think you need to see it. I will leave it with Elise if you don't want to see me. Nathan went to the brick house that evening. Claire had placed a large envelope on the dining room table. Robert was not there. Where is Dad? Nathan asked. At a motel. Nathan looked at her. I asked him to leave, Claire said. I can't look at him without hearing that he knew. Nathan sat across from her. She looked smaller than she had 2 weeks earlier. Her hair was uncombed and dark circles shadowed her eyes. She pushed the envelope toward him. After my mother died, I kept boxes from her office. I never opened most of them. This was inside a folder marked St. Agnes Foundation. Nathan removed 3 sheets of paper. The first was a handwritten note on stationery bearing Evelyn Shaw's initials. Howard, Claire cannot survive another loss. You have said the Cole woman has 2 healthy sons and no stable husband. Providence has placed a solution before us. Robert will agree when he understands. Handle the records. I will handle the rest. Nathan read it again, slower. The second sheet was a copy of a check from Evelyn Shaw to Dr. Howard Bell for $25,000, dated October 17, 1986. The memo line read consulting. The third was a letter from Dr. Bell, written 6 months later. Evelyn, I have done what you asked, and I expect this matter to remain closed. Nurse Park has questions. I have reminded her of the consequences of making accusations without evidence. The Cole file and Mercer file have been corrected. The county registrar accepted the amended forms. Do not contact me again regarding the child. Nathan set the pages down. Claire was crying before he looked up. She knew, Nathan said. Claire nodded. Your mother planned it. I think so. You think so. I know what the letters say. Did you know then? No, Claire's answer came quickly. Nathan, I swear to you, I knew you were not the baby I delivered. I woke after surgery and my mother told me our son had died. Then she said another woman wanted to place a child privately. I was barely conscious. I had lost 3 pregnancies before that. I had held hope inside me so many times and watched it disappear. Her voice trembled. Your grandmother brought you to me. She said your birth mother had chosen us. She said the papers were legal and the details had to remain confidential. I asked to meet the woman. Mother said she had already left and never wanted contact. You never saw adoption papers. I saw papers, I signed what I was given. Robert signed too, I thought they were legal. Where are they? I don't know. Your father kept them in a safe deposit box. After the letter came, he told me the adoption was valid, but someone at the hospital was trying to extort us. Nathan looked at Evelyn's handwriting. What was my grandmother like when you were young? Claire gave a broken laugh, the same as when you knew her, certain. She believed certainty made her right. She decided Marlene couldn't raise twins. She decided I deserved a child. And that was enough. For her, yes. Nathan pushed back from the table and walked to the window. In the yard stood the maple tree Robert had planted when Nathan was born. Its branches were nearly bare. My whole life, Nathan said, I thought that tree was planted for me. It was. Not for the baby you lost. Claire's breath caught. I never had a grave for him, she said. There was no funeral. Mother said the hospital handled the remains because he was stillborn. She told me not to ask questions because it would make my recovery harder. Nathan turned. For the first time, he saw a second secret hidden inside the first. What happened to your baby? Claire looked at the letters on the table. I don't know. Nathan called Daniel before he left. Within 2 days, the brothers were searching for Nurse Park. The name on Dr. Bell's letter was common enough to create dozens of false leads. They searched nursing license archives, old St. Agnes newsletters, retirement notices, and obituaries. St. Agnes had closed in 2003 after merging with a larger medical system. Most paper records had been transferred, scanned poorly, or destroyed according to retention policy. A photograph in a 1989 hospital newsletter finally gave them a full name: June Park, registered nurse, maternity ward. A retired nurses association directory listed a forwarding address in Toledo. Daniel mailed a letter. Nathan expected no response. 5 days later, June Park called. Her voice was thin but steady. I have waited a long time for one of you to find me, she said. They met her at an assisted living apartment overlooking a frozen pond. June was 83, with white hair cut close to her head and clear, watchful eyes. Her daughter stayed in the next room while they spoke. June asked Nathan to sit near the window. Let me see you in the light, she said. Nathan obeyed. She studied him for a few seconds and nodded to herself. You were baby B, she said. Daniel leaned forward. You remember. I remember the storm. I remember every child born that night. June opened a metal cash box on her lap. St. Agnes lost power just after midnight. The generator worked in surgery and intensive care, but half the maternity wing was dark. We used portable lamps. Dr. Bell delivered Mrs. Mercer's baby at 2:58, a boy, no heartbeat. We tried for 23 minutes. Nathan watched Claire's lost child become real in the room. Did my mother know? He asked. She was under general anesthesia. There had been heavy bleeding. And Marlene, Daniel asked. Your mother arrived in labor during the storm. Twins were not expected. The first boy came at 3:41, the second at 3:49. Both cried, both were healthy. June's hands tightened around the cash box. Mrs. Shaw arrived before dawn. She had been told her daughter's baby was dead. She spoke privately with Dr. Bell. I saw him carry baby B from the nursery. When I asked where he was going, he said the child needed observation. 20 minutes later, your mother was told one twin had stopped breathing. Daniel's face hardened. You knew they took him. I suspected. I did not know where until I saw Mrs. Mercer holding a living baby that afternoon. Why didn't you stop them? June accepted the question without flinching. I was 30 years old. Dr. Bell was chief of obstetrics. Evelyn Shaw's husband was a judge. When I challenged the chart, Bell accused me of confusing the infants during the power failure. He said if I repeated the accusation, he would report me for negligence and make certain I never worked as a nurse again. My mother lost her child, Daniel said. Yes, June's eyes filled, and I was afraid. Nathan asked, were the bracelets switched? June nodded. Dr. Bell ordered new bands printed for Mrs. Mercer. Baby B's original band was removed, but the nursery aide had already recorded both Cole infants in the handwritten night ledger. She opened the cash box and removed a folded sheet protected by plastic. I copied the page before Bell replaced it. The photocopy was faded, but the entries were readable. Cole, baby boy A stable, transferred to mother. Cole, baby boy B stable, removed from nursery by H. Bell, 4:31 a.m. Mercer, baby boy, stillborn, released to Bellwether Funeral Services, 6:05 a.m. Nathan stared at the final line. Released to a funeral home. June nodded. What name was used? I don't know. The official Mercer record later said live birth. The Cole record said baby B died. To make both stories work, someone had to bury the Mercer baby under the Cole name. Daniel stood so quickly his chair struck the wall. No. June looked down. Daniel paced to the door and back. My mother has been visiting that grave for 40 years. Nathan's stomach turned. The grave marked Samuel David Cole might contain Claire's biological son. Marlene had mourned a child who was alive. Claire had raised that child while believing her own baby had been taken away without a grave. The women's grief had been exchanged along with the infants. June removed another envelope from the cash box. I wrote to your father in 1995. I did not know how to contact Marlene without exposing her to more pain if I was wrong. Robert Mercer had resources. I thought he would investigate. He burned your letter, Nathan said. June closed her eyes, then I failed twice. Nathan wanted to be angry with her. Daniel clearly was, but June's fear had lasted 40 years too, and fear had already been used as an excuse by too many people. Why keep the copy? Nathan asked. Because a day might come when courage was no longer useful to me, but evidence still could be. They left with scanned copies of the ledger and a recorded statement. Outside, Daniel walked across the parking lot without speaking. Nathan followed. At the truck, Daniel turned on him. Your father knew. I know. He had the name of the nurse. He could have found my mother. I know. He watched you grow up while she put flowers on the grave of someone else's child. Nathan's own anger rose. Do you think I don't understand that? I think you keep saying he loved you like that erases what he did. I never said it erased anything. You defend him every time you explain him. And you want him to be a monster because that makes this simple. Daniel stepped closer. It is simple. He knew you were stolen and stayed quiet. He knew when I was 9. What exactly was he supposed to do? Drop me at your mother's door. He was supposed to tell the truth. To whom? A 9-year-old? Claire, who almost died. Marlene, who would have had to decide whether to tear a child from the only family he knew. Daniel's voice sharpened. At least she would have had a choice. Nathan had no answer to that. Daniel unlocked the truck. I'm taking the ledger to Mom. Wait until we verify the funeral records. Why? Because this will destroy her. She has been living inside a lie. You don't get to decide when she can handle the truth. The words echoed Robert's mistake so precisely that Nathan stopped. Daniel saw it too. For a moment, both men stood in the cold, breathing hard. Then Daniel said, more quietly, I spent my whole life watching her blame herself. She thought she had failed to notice that her baby was dying. She thought maybe if she had demanded to hold him longer, he would have lived. I will not protect the people who did that. Neither will I. Then stop asking me to move at the speed of your comfort. Daniel drove away alone. Nathan sat in his car and called Elise. I think we found the grave, he said. She listened as he explained. When he finished, she asked, What are you going to do about your father? I don't know. You do know, you're afraid of what it will cost. Nathan rested his forehead against the steering wheel. I already lost the father I thought I had. No, Elise said gently. You discovered the father you have. Now you have to decide what relationship is possible with the whole truth. The funeral home records were kept in a basement archive that smelled of dust and damp cardboard. Bellwether Funeral Services had changed owners twice, but the current director agreed to search after Nathan showed the ledger and explained the possible falsification. The original intake book for October 1986 contained an entry for Samuel David Cole. The body was listed as a male infant, 6 pounds 9 ounces. Daniel's copy of the hospital record gave baby B's birth weight as 6 pounds 4 ounces. Claire's prenatal records, found in one of her old medical folders, estimated her baby at 6 pounds 10 ounces. The funeral intake form listed the mother as Marlene Cole, but the authorization signature was not hers. It was Evelyn Shaw's. Nathan photographed the page. The funeral director looked sick. This should never have happened. But it did, Daniel said. The cemetery would not open the grave without a court order, and an exhumation would require consent, legal filings, and likely months of proceedings. Marlene refused when Daniel first explained. No, she said, that grave is all I had. Daniel tried to show her the weight records, but she pushed them away. They made me bury one child. I will not let strangers dig him up. But he may not be your child, Daniel said. Marlene looked at Nathan. Do you want this? Nathan struggled to answer. Part of him needed certainty. Another part could not bear the thought of a tiny coffin opened after 4 decades to settle the crimes of the living. I want the truth recorded, he said, but I don't want to take the grave from you. Marlene's expression softened. Claire surprised them all. She asked to meet Marlene. Nathan refused at first. She doesn't owe you that. I know. She may never want to see you. I know. What are you hoping for? Forgiveness? Claire shook her head. I want to tell her that her son was loved, and I want to hear about the child I lost from the only person who mourned him. Nathan carried the request to Marlene, expecting anger. Marlene sat at her kitchen table with the 2 hospital bracelets before her. After a long silence, she said, Bring her. They met on a Sunday afternoon. Claire entered Marlene's house using a cane, her face pale. Nathan walked beside her, ready to catch her if her knees failed. Marlene waited in the living room. Daniel stood near the window, arms folded. The 2 women looked at each other. Claire spoke first. I'm sorry. Marlene's mouth tightened. Were you told I gave him away? And yes. Did you believe it? And yes. For how long? Claire glanced at Nathan. I wanted to believe it forever. That is not what I asked. Claire lowered herself into a chair. I began to doubt after a few years. There were no agency records. No lawyer would discuss the adoption. My mother became angry whenever I asked. Then the nurse's letter came when Nathan was 9. Robert told me it was false. And you accepted that? I accepted what allowed me to keep being his mother. The honesty of the answer filled the room. Marlene looked toward Nathan. Did she take care of you? Yes, he said. Was she kind? And yes. Marlene turned back to Claire. Then you gave him what I prayed someone was giving him, but do not ask me to say that makes us even. I would never ask that. Claire opened her handbag and removed a small blue blanket, carefully folded. This was wrapped around Nathan when he was brought to me, she said. My mother told me the birth mother had sent it. Marlene stood. She crossed the room and took the blanket with both hands. A faded line of embroidered ducks ran along one edge. My sister made this, Marlene whispered. There were two, one green and one blue. She pressed the blanket to her face. Daniel turned toward the window. Claire began to cry, I'm sorry. Marlene held the blanket against her chest. I looked for this at the hospital. They said it had been soiled and thrown away. Claire reached into her bag again. There's something else. She removed a photograph Nathan had never seen. It showed him at perhaps 3 days old, asleep in the blue blanket. Around his ankle was a hospital band. The image was clearer than the photograph from Nathan's storage box. The band did not say Mercer. Even from across the room, Nathan could read the letters. Cold B. Marlene sank onto the sofa. The last uncertainty vanished. Nathan had not been adopted through a confused private arrangement. He had been taken directly from Marlene's hospital room, renamed, and given to Claire while still wearing the evidence of who he was. My mother took this picture, Claire said. She must not have noticed the bracelet, or maybe she kept it because she believed no one would ever see it. Nathan sat beside Marlene. She handed him the photograph. For 40 years, it had been possible to describe the secret with gentle words. Arrangement, adoption, misunderstanding, protection. The bracelet stripped those words away. A child had been stolen. Marlene touched Nathan's cheek. I knew your face, she said. Even when you were wrinkled and red, I knew it. Nathan's control broke. He leaned forward, and Marlene wrapped both arms around him. She did not call him Samuel. She said, Nathan, again and again, honoring the life he had lived even as she grieved the one taken from her. Across the room, Claire covered her mouth and sobbed. Nathan looked at her over Marlene's shoulder. There was no victory in the moment. No mother gained what the other lost. They were two women joined by a crime neither had fully chosen, and both had helped keep buried in different ways. Daniel stepped beside them. Marlene reached for him with one arm, pulling both sons close. For the first time in 40 years, she held her twins together. The photograph changed everything. Until then, Robert had continued to speak as though he had made one terrible decision years after an uncertain adoption. He had hidden the nurse's letter, yes, but he insisted he had never known for certain that Nathan had been stolen. When Nathan placed the photograph on the motel room table, Robert stopped defending himself. He sat on the edge of the bed in a room that smelled of industrial cleaner and stale coffee. A muted television flickered behind him. For several minutes he stared at the tiny band around the infant's ankle. I remember that blanket, he said. Nathan remained standing. Did you see the bracelet? Not then. When did you know? Robert rubbed both hands over his face. He looked older than 71. The night the letter came. You told Mom it was a scam. And yes. You burned it. And yes. Did you contact Nurse Park? Robert nodded once. Nathan felt the answer before Robert spoke. I called the number on the letter, Robert said. She told me everything. The twins, the changed records, your grandmother's payment to Belle. Nathan's hands curled into fists. You said all you had was a letter. I lied. Why? Because every true answer made me worse. At last, there was no excuse hidden inside the confession. Robert looked at the photograph. You were 9. You had just started 4th grade. You slept with the hallway light on because you had seen a horror movie at a friend's house. You wanted a dog. Your mother had finally stopped waking at night to make sure you were breathing. And Marlene's. I called her house once. Nathan stared at him. A woman answered, I heard a boy in the background. Daniel, I suppose I hung up. You heard my brother's voice and hung up. Robert's eyes filled. I told myself revealing the truth would create another theft. I told myself no court would remove a 9-year-old from the only parents he knew. I told myself Marlene would be hurt more by knowing you were alive, but not hers to raise. You told yourself whatever let you go home. And yes, the simple agreement took the force from Nathan's anger for a moment. Robert continued, I loved you more than I loved being an honest man. At the time, I thought that made me a father. Now I understand it made me a coward. Nathan looked toward the window. Cars moved along the highway, their headlights passing across the wall. Did you ever plan to tell me? Every birthday, every time you asked about the family. When you and Elise had Sophie, I almost told you because of the medical history. Then I looked at your mother holding her granddaughter and lost my nerve again. Nathan thought of all the ordinary moments that had required Robert to choose silence. School forms asking about inherited illness, doctor visits, family tree projects, jokes about the Mercer chin. The secret had not been buried once. It had been reburied daily. I don't know whether I can forgive you, Nathan said. Robert nodded, I know. I don't even know whether I want to. You don't owe me forgiveness. But you owe Marlene the truth in your own voice. Robert looked frightened. Nathan felt no pity. You are going to write down everything you knew, every conversation, every document, every lie. You are going to sign it in front of a notary. Then you are going to give it to her and to Daniel, not through me. Robert swallowed, all right. And you are going to cooperate with the investigation. What investigation? The hospital system is opening an internal review. The county registrar is examining the altered certificate. Daniel found an attorney. Robert closed his eyes. Nathan stepped toward the door. And Nate? He stopped but did not turn. I was there when you took your first breath in our room, Robert said. Whatever else is true, loving you is never a lie. Nathan gripped the door handle. That is what makes this hurt, he replied. The legal process moved more slowly than grief. Dr. Howard Bell had died 12 years earlier. Evelyn Shaw had been dead for 17. Criminal charges against them were impossible, and many records had vanished. But the surviving evidence was enough for the hospital network to acknowledge that records had been falsified and that Nathan had been transferred without Marlene's consent. The county issued a corrected birth record. It listed Marlene Cole as Nathan's biological mother and left the father's name as it appeared in the original Cole file. Nathan chose not to erase the Mercer certificate. He kept both copies in the same folder. One documented the truth of his birth. The other documented the life that followed. Reporters learned about the case after a court filing concerning the grave. Daniel wanted the story public. Nathan resisted at first, afraid that Claire and Marlene would become characters in a spectacle. But Marlene made the decision herself. For 40 years, she said, people with respected names counted on my silence. I am finished protecting them. She gave one interview, seated between her sons. She did not speak with bitterness. She described the 2 cries she had heard, the bracelet returned after the funeral, the birthdays with 2 cakes. When asked what she wanted, she said, I want every hospital to understand that a frightened mother is still a mother, a poor mother is still a mother, and grief does not give powerful people the right to choose whose child matters. The interview spread across the country. Other families contacted the hospital with questions about old records. The medical system created an independent review board and established a fund to preserve historical maternity files. None of it restored 40 years, but the secret could no longer hide behind missing paper and dead authority. Robert delivered his statement to Marlene in person. Daniel wanted to be present, Nathan did not. Later, Marlene told him Robert had stood on her porch and read every page without asking her to make him feel better. When he finished, she said, You kept my son safe, and you kept him from me. I will be grateful for the first until I die. I may be angry about the second just as long. Robert accepted that. Claire moved back into the brick house after 3 months, but Robert stayed in the guest room. Their marriage did not return to what it had been. Perhaps it never could. They began counseling, not to save the appearance of their old life, but to decide whether a truthful new one was possible. Nathan visited Claire before he visited Robert. At first, his conversations with Claire were careful and brief. She asked about Sophie. He asked about her knees. Neither spoke about the hospital unless they had to. Then one afternoon, Claire showed him a box of letters she had written but never sent. They were addressed to Nathan's first mother. Some were decades old. In one, written when Nathan was 5, Claire described his first day of kindergarten and the way he had insisted on wearing rain boots in sunlight. In another, she admitted that she sometimes feared a woman would appear at the door and ask for him back. The final letter had been written after the DNA result. I loved him with the desperation of someone who believed love could make possession innocent. I know now that love cannot repair a lie it refuses to name. I do not ask you to share him with me. He is not an object between us. I only hope there may be room in the truth for all the years he was cherished. Nathan brought the letters to Marlene. She read them over several weeks. Then she invited Claire to tea. Their relationship was not friendship. It had no simple name. Sometimes they sat together comfortably. Sometimes Marlene asked a question that left Claire crying. Sometimes Claire described a childhood memory, and Marlene listened with a hunger that made Nathan leave the room. They learned not to compete over the word mother. Claire was the woman Nathan called when he needed the recipe for chicken soup or wanted to remember the name of a childhood neighbor. Marlene was the woman who could tell him why he sneezed in sunlight, why Daniel hated the smell of lavender, and why both brothers woke from dreams with their hands clenched. Blood explained some things. History explained others. Love, Nathan discovered, was not weakened by accuracy. It was only made harder to use as a disguise. Sophie learned the truth during winter break. Nathan and Elise sat with her at the kitchen table. He told the story without softening what had happened, but he did not turn anyone into a monster for her. Sophie cried when she learned Marlene had believed him dead. She became angry with Robert. Then she asked the question Nathan had feared most. Does this mean Grandpa isn't my grandpa? Nathan looked at Elise before answering. It means he is not related to you by blood, he said. It also means he made a terrible choice. Both things are true. What you call him will be your choice, but you do not have to stop loving someone in order to understand what they did. Sophie considered this. Can I have 2 grandmas? Nathan smiled through tears. You already do. The grave remained closed. After months of legal discussion, Marlene and Claire agreed not to exhume the infant. The records, ledger, photograph, and statements gave them enough certainty. Neither woman wanted the child's body turned into the final piece of evidence in a case already proven. Instead, they petitioned the cemetery to change the marker. On a clear October morning, 1 year after Nathan opened his DNA results, the families gathered at Greenwood Cemetery. The old stone bearing Samuel David Cole's name had been removed. In its place stood a wider marker with 2 inscriptions. Michael Robert Mercer. Beloved son of Claire and Robert. Born and died October 14, 1986. And beneath it, Samuel David Cole. Beloved son of Marlene, known in life as Nathan Michael Mercer. Lost, found, and loved under both names. Nathan had resisted the wording at first. He did not feel like Samuel. That name belonged to Marlene's hope and grief, to the candle extinguished each year before he knew it existed. But he came to understand that accepting the name did not require surrendering Nathan. He could honor the child Marlene lost without pretending the man he became had lived another life. Marlene placed a blue blanket across the base of the stone. Claire set down a small wooden car Nathan had played with as a boy. Daniel brought 2 cupcakes, 1 chocolate, 1 vanilla. Sophie placed a photograph of the brothers together. Robert stood several steps away until Marlene looked at him and nodded. It was not forgiveness. It was permission to approach the grave of his biological son. Robert knelt and touched Michael's name. I'm sorry, he whispered. Claire rested a hand on his shoulder. Nathan watched them and felt grief for a brother he had never known, a child whose death had been hidden so another child could be claimed. For most of his life, Nathan had believed he was an only child. Now he stood between a living twin and a dead brother whose identity had been used to erase him. Daniel came beside him. You okay? He asked. No, Nathan said. Daniel nodded, me neither. They stood shoulder to shoulder. Their resemblance no longer frightened Nathan. It felt like evidence of something that had survived every attempt to bury it. After the cemetery, everyone returned to Marlene's house. The gathering was awkward at first. Claire offered to help in the kitchen. Marlene told her where to find the plates. Robert sat near the window and spoke quietly with Elise. Sophie showed Daniel's sons old photographs of Nathan, and they laughed at how similar the brothers had looked as teenagers despite growing up apart. Marlene brought out a birthday cake. For 40 years, she had baked 2 small cakes and blown out 1 candle herself. This time, there was 1 large cake with 2 names written across the top. Daniel and Nathan. She placed 2 candles in the icing. Nathan looked around the room. At the mother who gave birth to him. At the mother who raised him. At the father who loved him and failed him. At the brother who had searched for a dead twin and found a living man. At the wife and daughter who had held him together while his past came apart. No one in the room was innocent of every mistake. No one was only the worst thing they had done. Even Evelyn, whose certainty had begun the tragedy, had probably called her crime salvation until the end of her life. That was the danger, Nathan understood. The greatest harm was not always committed by people who believed themselves cruel. Sometimes it was committed by people convinced that their love gave them the right to choose another person's truth. Marlene lit the candles. "Make a wish," she said. Daniel leaned toward Nathan. "You first." "We're twins, we do it together." They bent toward the cake. Nathan did not wish for the lost years to return. They could not. He did not wish for the secret never to have happened, because that would erase the daughter upstairs laughing with her new cousins, the wife holding his hand, and even the life Claire and Robert had given him. He wished that truth would no longer arrive as a weapon in their family. Then he and Daniel blew out the candles together. Months later, Nathan returned to his classroom with a new lesson for his students. He still taught them that memory was unreliable, that records could be altered, and that history was often written by people with enough power to make their version official. But he added something he had learned outside any textbook. A document could tell you what happened. Blood could tell you where you began. Neither could tell you, by itself, who you were. Identity was not a single inheritance. It was built from names given and names recovered, from love received and harm survived, from choices made after the truth finally became yours. Nathan kept the DNA kit box in the bottom drawer of his desk at home. Elise once asked why he had not thrown it away. He turned it over in his hands, remembering how harmless it had looked on the kitchen counter. "Because it reminds me," he said. "Of what?" "That the truth can wait longer than people think." He placed the box back in the drawer. "But it doesn't stay buried forever."